Hello, GOTR crew. My name is Mike Frekey, and I'm going to be today's guest host as we dive into the newly IPO'd Wish.com. Before we do, I wanted to give a special thank you to Nolan for bringing me onto the show. Two of us have been working together for a little over 5 years now on the e-commerce agency side, him working mostly in the Google world while I own and manage our marketplace team. So we figured what better way to introduce myself to the show than by diving into a marketplace. Now, we do have an Amazon video or two planned in the works, so keep an eye out for those. But in the meantime, let's talk about Wish. Wish is a unique company. They are a marketplace more similar, I would say, to AliExpress than an Amazon in that they focus on very low-cost items in a sort of a cool niche or some sort of a style-based niche. And their main value prop is these are going to be very low-cost items with, albeit very long shipping windows to keep those costs down. So don't necessarily look at this as a competitor to Amazon, more in that AliExpress space. Now, as I mentioned, this company did recently IPO, and this is a good point to notice. What I'm going to be walking through is more my process for evaluating a stock, really whether or not I want to consider this a long-term investment for me. IPOs are going to be doing very, very odd things. You can already see a bit of a roller coaster in just 2 weeks, or rather 4 weeks now at this point, for Wish. So please just consider all of this my process for evaluating. We're not going to walk through everything, but what we are going to cover are a few things that made me really excited about Wish, a few things that made me not so excited about Wish. And we're going to go back and forth in between the US numbers as well as the global international numbers, because we are going to see quite a shocking difference between the two in certain areas. So now we can, without further ado, dive into it. And the first thing I wanted to look at was the Wish app. Now, app type searches, very unique in that just because you see that volume going down over time, it's not necessarily a bad thing. App type searches make sense. As you get the app, you are no longer going to be searching for the app. So Wish, which peaked up in 2017, you can see with the green line up at the top, that is when they had by far the most users starting to become members of their, just users of the app. That had been going down each of the past few years and spiked back up really in this mid period of 2020, end of March, and then died back down to regular levels around end of July. We'll keep those dates in mind because, as we know, a lot of e-commerce sellers saw a lot of growth during that same time. But let's take a quick look. Those are the US numbers. Let's look global. And we'll see here about the same sort of a trend. Actually didn't really kick off until a little bit later in April on the global level. But one thing I did want to show here is if you switch this view into the mobile version of the app, so you can either just use this on your phone, or if you just do this in the inspect element like I'm doing it, then you can actually see a pretty nice view of what are the top countries and are they growing. So in here, Belgium, Ireland, Philippines. One that I'm personally interested in is India, where you can also see here the blue dot there for India being one of the larger countries that did grow in 2020, as opposed to most of these other. You're seeing a lot of green, you're seeing a lot of yellow. Those are going to be countries that really maxed out their Wish audiences in 2017, 2018, when they were focusing on their expansion at that point. I will confirm in 2017, Wish had a very, very aggressive promotion type strategy. And I think that is really where we saw them make most of their gains. They have not gone nearly as aggressively in a cold capture perspective. Most of their marketing that I've been seeing has been more in the realm of remarketing. So users who have been to the site, who have already downloaded the app, getting push notifications, getting remarketed to via display and video. So that has been their strategy thus far. Just wanted to show where the growth is coming from on the app. Meanwhile, opposite the app, you have people who are going to be logging into Wish.com. And here we're seeing about the same, again, spiking up in mid-April, dying back down mid to end of July. It's just that Q2 period when COVID was at its peak is when they started to see the most growth here. but it was a little bit different on the worldwide stage. So worldwide, we had much more of an increase, at least year over year versus 2019. Naturally, you can see that we were actually beating 2019 numbers throughout the majority of the year, spiked back up again that same mid-April period. And then we've actually been maintaining at least that year over year growth for the majority of the rest of the year, Q3 and then into Q4. And this is something that it's been mixed with Wish. Is Q4 is what I really wanted to look at. Again, if you told me, hey, did you guys know that Wish saw massive user growth in from March to July? I would say, oh, you mean like every other e-commerce seller? That does not make me as excited to get involved in the stock as, well, how did they do in Q4? Because at the very least, we know that a handful of businesses, in fact, did not continue riding that wave into Q4, and Q4 was still massive if you were in e-commerce, but there's just a little bit more nuance there. And for a lot of these areas, you're going to see that Wish actually did not maintain any of its strong performance in Q4, but there's a few where it did. Let's move on. I want to take a look at what are the worst types of engagement that Wish could be getting right now. That's returns and that's cancellations. And I'm even going to say worst with a little asterisk because you're not going to be returning in order you never made. You're not going to be canceling order you never placed. So just knowing that in mind, we have seen a large uptick in the return realm. We'll also skip ahead to the cancels, and we're seeing another large uptick in cancels. These are both for the United States. And where I really wanted to highlight this is, to me, this is indicative of a higher rate of returns and a higher rate of cancellations, not just a, oh, well, people are shopping more, so of course you're going to see more cancellations and you're going to see more returns. That's how I've been looking at this, especially when we're taking a look at the annual numbers. We're seeing 2017 average cancellation was at a 13 versus 2020. We're looking at a 35. Let's go jump back to the Wish login realm where these were more or less at the same search volume levels. Now, again, we'll keep in mind a little bit higher volume in that Q2 period. And when we're going to look at the returns and the cancellations, we are seeing more returns and cancellations in that Q2 period. But the relative numbers, at least how I am seeing them, are somewhat indicative of a higher rate of return, higher rate of cancellation than what we had seen in any other year. And that is concerning to me. That is something that I'm not excited about when I'm evaluating Wish as a long-term position. Take a look at the year-long levels the worldwide levels. And here we're seeing a somewhat similar picture, only we're seeing the returns just as prominent in Q4. We look at the cancellations. Cancellations are actually down quite a bit. That's also somewhat concerning to me. I would have, if anything, I would somewhat hope to see higher cancellations in Q4 than returns is what we ended up seeing, in that because Wish has a month to 2 month long shipping window in most cases, I would not expect there to be an opportunity to return as many orders in Q4 versus there is a lot of opportunity for people to be canceling orders. The fact that we're seeing cancellations actually go down in Q4, potentially it's a good thing. Potentially this means that Wish has figured out some of the issues that led to their higher cancellation rate at this period in Q2, Q3. I'm not sure, and that's something that I'm actually going to be following up with. I want to go back to this chart. I want to look at the cancellations and returns for both US and worldwide over the next couple of months so that I can start to see if cancellations, maybe they stay low and maybe returns go back to normal. I'm going to be excited about that if we see a maintained higher peak with maybe order or account type searches. So my evaluation, I just want to say, is never really done. This is just something that I want to be looking at over time. If we then go in, something interesting I just wanted to look at, I've done this evaluation for Shopify, for Magento, BigCommerce, and then of course Amazon. I want to look at who are people trying to use this as a platform to sell. So not just are they growing their user base of people buying, but are they growing their user base of people who view this as a viable channel to make money? Now, in the US, the answer is no. We can see here pretty even levels across the past 4 years, at least. We're on a little bit of an uphill climb, which is nice, but all in all, I would say search volume, especially when we see numbers that are this jagged, that really just indicates there's too low of search volume to really generate any real trends off of. So on the US side, we are not seeing Wish being recognized as a marketplace that you can sell on. However, worldwide, we're starting to see that it's a bit more positively recognized, especially just over time. We are seeing this significant increase in people who want to be Wish merchants year over year. We did see a much greater spike versus even our best year of 2018. So that is really exciting to me. If we scroll down, we can actually see what are these countries that are starting to become more and more engaged with and involved with Wish on the merchant side. And India and the United Kingdom being two that had significant growth as larger economies, that is something that really does excite me. So this is another area that I want to be just keeping up with, not as frequently as maybe the cancellations versus returns, but I want to be looking at this in the next 3 months, 6 months to a year and see if we're maintaining any sort of this trajectory throughout 2021, or if this really was just an uptick from COVID. And one more area that this is of concern to me is if we see a lot of these people who are maybe first-time Wish merchants because of COVID and they don't come back, that shows to me that Wish merchants are not looking at this channel as being viable to make money in the same way they are for Amazon, for eBay, Walmart, what have you. So that will be another one to check in on a little bit later down the road. Now, another area that I wanted to just evaluate, see how this is working against their competitors. I chose clothing. You could theoretically do this search with shoes, with electronics, whatever you wanted to do. I chose clothing here to see how is Wish comparing in search volume versus other marketplaces outside of he who shall not be named yet. So in here we are seeing that Wish actually has grown a little bit over the past 5 years. And they've definitely been making up some ground versus eBay, which has been on much more of a downward trend. However, this is not as exciting for me as I may have wanted it to be, seeing this, we're sort of riding the trend and then not really faltering as much going out through the rest of the year relative to eBay. But mostly this is just because when we add in the big one, Amazon clothes, we're now going to see that Amazon has in fact really been growing this entire time. So eBay shrinking has not so much been as a result of any other marketplace below them catching up and stealing share, but just eBay continuing to lose share to Amazon. So again, I'm evaluating Wish right now as a newly IPO'd company, figure out, is this something I want to have a long-term hold for me? Amazon is definitely in that area. Wish, again, we'll see. So then the last two areas I wanted to look at to see, okay, well, we've checked the login and that was a little inconclusive. We've seen cancellations and returns. Those are going up, and that's not necessarily a good thing when it's more of a rate-based thing. I wanted to check two more that could be indicative of more positive usage. That's going to be Wish account, people who are just looking to log into their Wish account, maybe without the word login, and then Wish order, so people who are looking to check the status of their orders on Wish. And in this case, again, a little bit of an uptick, pretty much entirely in that Q2, Q3 area during the peak of COVID. And then when we're looking at Q4, some areas where we saw some growth. All in all, this is more so of just Wish doing what they've done over the past 4 years in Q4. So I'm not overly excited there on the US side. It is a little bit better worldwide. We're seeing this blue bar a lot more at the top. So better in terms of that Q4 performance worldwide. But what has now been the most exciting piece for me for Wish, I'm going to take a look at, is the Wish orders. And here we're seeing almost every single week, including in Q4, we did see people searching Wish orders at a higher rate than they did in previous years. Obviously, much higher throughout the year, but we even started to see the largest uptick in that year over year, or really past 5 years volume for Wish orders taking place in February around Valentine's Day. So Wish had already been on an uphill trajectory for 2020 before we started to see the e-commerce surge in March, April, May. So that is really exciting to me. And then when we look at worldwide, it's very clear. Again, that same surge that we started to see in the beginning of 2020 on the U.S. is significantly larger on the global scale, and really outside of a few specific weeks, Wish had maintained that much higher search volume across the board. And if we take a look at these countries, again, we're seeing India, we're seeing the United Kingdom, we're seeing Ireland in some of those highest growing areas. One that I will just call out a little bit, Brazil, they had spiked up in 2017, and that was an area I kind of wanted to see Wish grow on over the past few years, but they just haven't. And so when I'm looking at where does Wish have to go from here, this is the last data point I wanted to share with you guys. I'm just looking at what countries do they have room to grow in, even if we're looking at the United States. It's not heavy. Actually, it's heavier than I thought. The Wish orders had grown in the US quite a bit year over year. And a lot of that's going to be due to COVID, but really throughout the year in many of these countries, it was just a consistent level of growth. So I want to be looking at in 2021. Can they continue that pace? Are we going to be seeing a similarly high spike to the start of the year that we saw in 2020, or is that going to now fizzle out? We are starting at a lower point from the very end of the year versus where we did going from 2019 to 2020. So that's a concern of mine. I want to be looking at in some of these larger economies, are we going to see the United Kingdom and India continue to grow at a faster rate than what we've been seeing over, in generally speaking, the United States, and then other countries like Canada or Brazil, where they peaked a few years ago and then started to really fizzle out. We have a few years of data to be looking at there to see whether or not this is a true growth mindset, or if this is just a get your base and then maintain it without growing it too much, focusing more on retaining of that base, but not adding more users to it. I also want to be looking at the Wish merchants. I want to see if people are looking at this as a channel to make money, not just a channel to buy things on. And then I want to be checking out the cancellations versus return orders and see if that rate seems to normalize at all relative to something like our Wish orders. And if we actually use Wish order as opposed to Wish, Wish login or Wish app, then the rate becomes a lot more understandable, and maybe we actually did not see a too large of a rate increase in canceled orders or in returns. So all of these are the areas that I'm going to be continuing to look at with Wish. All in all, I would say that Wish is a buy to me. This is not a high conviction trade, but this is an area that I want to have a small piece in my portfolio and to start evaluating over the next coming months or so. Will they continue to grow, or are they going to go back into the ways of 2018, 2019, where they are sort of resting on their laurels? This has been Mike Frekey, your guest host of GOTR Investing. And remember, let the trend be your friend. Thank you very much.